Well, good morning to you all at St Mary's, to those in person, to those watching online. It's lovely to be able to share with you this morning on behalf of Open Doors. Thank you so much to you as a church family for your ongoing support and prayer for the persecuted church. My name is Dan. I work as a church relationship manager for Open Doors, and it's great to be with you. You'd have already watched the top 5 video this morning, which talks about the hardest places on our planet to follow after Jesus. A persecuted Christian is someone who is pursued. That's what the word means. They're pursued for their faith in Jesus, and it can mean they lose their income and their jobs. It can mean they're excluded and isolated from their own family. Their homes and church buildings are targeted, and in the most extreme cases it can mean imprisonment or even death. And we work in over 60 countries around the world, strengthening and encouraging Christians where they are facing persecution. And we're continually inspired by their stories of faith and how they have this heavenly perspective, this hope even in the most difficult circumstance. And that's the heart of what I want to share this morning, that Jesus is worth it. He's worth the ups, he's worth the downs. Our persecuted family know this through the pain, the uncertainty, the foolishness of this life, that Jesus is worth it. If you've got a Bible, it's Matthew chapter 13 and verses 44 and 45. 2 verses, 2 parables. The kingdom of heaven, verse 44, is like treasure that's hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. So you've just got this man out in a field going from A to B. He's not got a metal detector. He's not out there searching. He's just wandering. And you picture him wandering, and he stumbles across this treasure. So great is the treasure that he hides it, he covers it, and he goes away. He gets everything that he has, and he sells it all in order that he can buy this field which contains the treasure. Then, verse 45. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who on finding one pearl of great value, went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, we have somebody, but this time they're searching. It's a merchant. They're in search of fine pearls. They've already got loads of them, I'm sure. But he finds this one pearl, this one of great price, and he sells everything that he has in order to get this one pearl. And for both stories, one man who's searching and one man who's just wandering through life and just happens to find it, the outcome is the same. They sell all that they have in order to gain this treasure. And Jesus says this treasure is the kingdom of heaven. Well, what's that? Well, it's Jesus himself. It's knowing and loving God. It's being known and loved by God. Jesus is the pearl of great price. He's the treasure. And Jesus says it's worth giving up everything for. Both of the men in this parable, they are satisfied that it's worth their present sacrifice of everything in order to secure them a better future. They gain the treasure. Now, on the face of it, to their friends, it would have looked foolish. You're doing what? Selling everything you have for this one pearl, this one field? Let me tell you the story of Chinese evangelist Wang Ming Dao. In 1955, he was imprisoned by the state for resisting the government. That means that he was saying Jesus is Lord and King, not the Chinese authority. And so for that, he was imprisoned. Now, as he's imprisoned, he's told you can go free if you sign a confession of your crimes. You would need to say that you are no longer a Christian and that you would stop sharing about Jesus. And so Wang Ming Dao, he initially signs this document and he's set free. But within hours of being released, he realizes he's made a terrible mistake. And so what Wang Ming Dao does is he goes back to the authorities and he recants his confession. As a result of this, he is sentenced to 22 years in prison, many of them in isolation. Uncertain, dark, hopeless even. Well, Wang Ming Dao realized he could still serve God. He realized that the pit toilet in the corner of his kind of cell connected to all the other pit toilets, that the sewage pipes connected them together. And so he began to talk about Jesus. He began to share his faith. He began to preach down the pit. And over many years, Wang Ming Dao saw 96 people put their trust in Jesus because he taught about Jesus down the toilet. This is what the man had to say. I had no Bible, no pulpit, no audience, no pen, no paper. I could do nothing except get to know God. And for 20 years, that was the greatest relationship I've ever known. When I was in the cell, the only thing I was focused on was getting to know Jesus. It was just me and him. You need to build yourself a cell where it's only you and Jesus. He served 22 years in prison for following after Jesus. And he was faced with a choice, wasn't he? And he chose Jesus. And that was the greatest relationship he had. He threw everything into that. Millions of Christians around the world right now face choices like that. Who am I going to live for? What is going to be the cost? And there's a challenge for us as well here. With so much stuff everywhere, with so much to distract us, will you build yourself a cell? Will you create this time where it's only you and Jesus? Do we prioritize him? Or do other things just get in the way? Are there changes that you could make? Jesus says, where your treasure is, there your heart is also. Both of the guys in this parable, they realized the worth of the treasure and so acted accordingly. And I'm not saying go and sell all that you have right now, but what I'm saying is Jesus worth it to you? Is he worth giving up things for? I treasure Jesus because he treasures me. I love him because he first loved me. And we see it time and again with our persecuted family that they keep hoping despite circumstance. They keep trusting because they know they're loved by God. They look to the cross, the place where Jesus dies in our place because he loves us, because he wants us, because he wants that relationship with you. So no matter how far from God you may feel this morning, you're not beyond his reach, you're not beyond his grace. Whether you're searching like the merchant or whether you feel like you're just aimlessly wandering through life, there is treasure to be found. And his name is Jesus. And the cost is a change of direction, to follow after him wholeheartedly. But it's worth it. We may lose everything, but we gain Christ. It's what our persecuted family have discovered. They make these choices every single day. And are you able to stand with them? With Christians who give up everything to follow Jesus. It can cost them their families. It can cost them receiving aid and support, particularly during COVID. Their jobs, their livelihood, their freedom, and even their lives. Will you stand in the gap and support them? Standing in the gap is an easy way of remembering how we can support our family around the world. GAP stands for our giving, our acting, and our praying. And our website is really the best place for all the up-to-date information on how your support can help our family around the world. It's www.opendoorsuk.org. There you'll find information on how you can pray and how you can act on their behalf as well. Thank you so much to you as a church family for your ongoing support and prayer for the persecuted church. Finally, to encourage you, let me share with you the story of Peter from Eritrea. Peter was arrested when police stormed into a secret church gathering that he was just attending. He was in the congregation. And for 6 years he was held without charges, and he was frequently moved from prison to prison. Once he was transferred to a prison cell that was so narrow, the only thing that he could do was lie down. It was like a coffin. For 5 months he was held in there, and then from there he was taken to a cell that was completely underground and completely dark. He was held in that for a further 6 months. And when they pulled Peter out of this hole, he was nearly blind, his legs paralysed. By God's grace, his sight returned and his legs began to work. These are Peter's words. I was asked many times to recant my Christian faith, but I refused. And when I refused, I was punished. Sometimes no food, no water, and I was made to work in the sun hungry. Sometimes we got tied up and left outside for many hours. It was painful. The police threatened to arrest my other family members if I refused to recant and sign this document. But at all times I refused because I didn't want to leave Jesus. His crimes, the document read this: "From now on, I will not preach, I will not meet other Christians, I will not talk about Jesus." But Peter refused to sign it, saying that his suffering, his time in prison would go to waste. And so they locked him up again. Finally, Peter and two friends, they resolved to escape. And so with no shoes and just the clothes on their back, to the sound of gunfire, they ran for their lives. And they didn't stop walking until they reached a refugee camp some 200 kilometers away. And through the help of Open Doors partners on the ground, Peter was taken to a place of safety where he was cared for, where he was encouraged, where he was strengthened. These are his words: "When I reached here, I looked back and I saw that I had lost my freedom. But I also see now that I had lost time. I could not continue with school. I could not get skills training. I do not know how to do office work. I can't see myself marrying and having my own children. I'm almost 40 years old now, and I have to start from nothing." And then he smiled, and he concluded, "But I still have Jesus, and he is worth it all." Is Jesus worth it all for you? God bless you.